It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by Agile Dad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. It happened again. I have a bunch of successful classes here that have gone really awesome, but I get some questions sometimes that make me just scratch my head a little bit. And this was one of those questions. So, in the most recent Scrum guide, they called out instead of roles, accountabilities. Now, let me tell you, I like this change. I like the way it's laid out. I like that it calls out accountabilities. It takes it beyond what the title is and carries into what people should be doing. But I think that sometimes there's confusion and frustration and sometimes just lengthy discussions because the truth is, most organizations that I go and visit don't necessarily have the titles that line up with the roles and accountabilities in a way that makes sense. So if you've ever been in a position where you hear people who are in a conversation, somebody said, "Oh, I thought that was your job. You're the one who's accountable for that," right? Oh my goodness. Or when somebody says, "Isn't that something that you do?" Or, "Oh, that's not my responsibility," or those kinds of things, right? I think that the more unclear we are on responsibilities and how they tie back to accountabilities, the more we're going to get trapped in confusion and arguments and all these other things. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity to take you on a little journey and talk about the differences between these, maybe the difference between responsibility and accountability, and how accountabilities play alongside roles, and what does it all mean and how does it tie together. So let's start by going to the dictionary. So first, let's take a look at the word accountability. So accountability says here, quote, the state of being accountable, liable, or answerable. I ain't even answerable was a word, but yeah, but the accountability is the state of being accountable. Okay, I think that's just kind of a drag on words, if you will, right? So for me, when I think about accountability, I think about it's a knowledge that you are being counted on or relied on for something to be done. And I know it's too close. Responsibility in a dictionary says the state or fact of having a duty to deal with something or having some control or control over someone. So I'm still thinking this is too close and too unclear. So let's try it a different way. Let's try to use an example. So if we said that you went to the grocery store, if you went to the grocery store, right, and you were picking up some food from the produce section, you might say that it is the produce worker's responsibility to stock the shelves, right, and to get everything out there so that you can buy it. But if the shelf has a bunch of things on it that are outdated and spoiled, or in this case, rotten, the produce worker would be accountable for that mistake. That food still remained on a shelf. I mean, I know it sounds weird, but that's probably one of the easiest examples that I could think of. I think that sometimes, though, when we talk about the roles, and specifically, yes, I call them roles, specifically accountabilities according to the Scrum Guide, of the product owner to Scrum Master and the development team, I want to talk about some specific accountabilities and responsibilities for each one because I think that's going to help us quite a bit. So let's talk about the product owner real quick. So for the product owner, they're accountable for the product vision. They need to make sure that we have a vision and a product strategy to execute that vision. So it's important for them to understand that that's part of their accountability. They're accountable for that. They need to get it done. They're accountable for goals. They need to make sure we have meaningful goals that are focused on a product at the product level and that those tie to the organizational North Star. They also focus on and are accountable for value maximization. So we want them to maximize value or help us maximize value of whatever product or service we're building. And they're also accountable for communication with all the key stakeholders, interested parties, sponsors, and other people who are helping us to get to the point where we build a correct product or service. Now, as opposed to accountabilities, the responsibilities. So here comes the responsibilities of a product owner. So let's try this. The responsibilities of a product owner are stakeholder management, They need to make sure that they engage and organize with stakeholders and partner up and create value. They are responsible for backlog management. So to curate, sort, clean up, organize, clarify, all those good things, that is all backlog management. They're responsible for a roadmap, making sure that every product fits into a roadmap and that we know how those roadmaps tie to our greater vision of what we're trying to do. They're responsible for monitoring results, keeping us on track, helping us make sure that we're working towards and all marching to the beat of the same drum and working towards building products and services that make sense, that matter. And they're responsible for product discovery. This is one I often forget, that they're not just responsible for the delivery of a product, and that's actually what the team is doing, but they're responsible for making sure that we do some ideation, some brainstorming, some initiation, and that we're also doing some type of research. And I don't necessarily like to call it research, but that we're doing discovery and that we're finding out exactly what we need to do. Yes? Okay, so if you think about it from that perspective, that's a pretty good separation between accountabilities and responsibilities for the product owner. Let's talk for a minute about the Scrum Master. So, for the Scrum Master, if I had to go through their accountabilities, I would say understanding Scrum. So, Scrum education, right? That is an accountability of the Scrum Master. They need to help create a proper atmosphere of psychological safety. That is also an accountability of the Scrum Master. They need to ensure that everything falls within the Scrum framework and that we're in line with Scrum Guide. That is an accountability. They need to make sure that they're accountable for the team's effectiveness, that they're doing all they can to help the team grow and improve. They also are accountable for enabling self management and self organization within a team. Now, some of their responsibilities, they need to ensure that all of the different ceremonies take place, specifically that not only do they take place, but that they have the expected inputs and outputs, and that the right people are in attendance. That they're doing all the things with regard to the rats. They need to coach stakeholders to invest in whatever's necessary so that business people can thrive within the Scrum environment. And they need to manage and govern and be responsible for the remaining Scrum events. I think the one that I want to focus on the most probably would be the retrospective. They need to make sure that it takes place and that it ends up with some actions that are actionable so that we can get them in place. Yes? Okay, and that leaves us with the development team. So for the development team, they're accountable for quality. We want to make sure that quality maintains a high standard. They're responsible for scale, or not responsible, sorry, they're accountable for quality. They're accountable for scalability to make sure that whatever tools or services or products they're building are actually scalable. They're accountable for efficiency, making sure that everything is looked at from the consumer's perspective and that we're being efficient. And they're accountable for maintainability, making sure that we can maintain whatever product or service we're trying to build. As far as responsibilities are concerned, they're responsible for building the right solution to meet the agreed needs or to solve the agreed upon problem. They're responsible for testing their products and services to make sure that they are high quality and that they don't disrupt anything that's currently in motion. They're responsible for delivery. They want to make sure that no matter how hard we work or how little we work, that we're delivering value each and every sprint. We need to release potentially shippable product increments every sprint. And they're also responsible for estimates, high quality estimates that are not time based, that are based on relative complexity, that are going to help us as an organization be successful. If you can get those things down, then you're going to have a much easier way understanding how each of these different functionalities, how they work together, and how they can provide a really, really strong sense of business agility within an organization. That's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have a question or if you have a topic you want us to discuss, reach out to us at learnmore@agiledad.com. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.